archaeological expedition led by Chai Pu-te reportedly arrived to study a series of interconnected caves. What they are said to have found was far more intriguing.
In a cave allegedly found a row upon row, or several rows of what looked like graves.
But these were no ordinary graves.
Inside these graves were many skeletons buried, skeletons with big heads, big and clumsy heads, and with fragile bones.
And in addition, on the walls, we are told that there were images of these stick figures of presumably these beings, these short beings with the large heads, with images of the sun, moon, and stars.
He also found 716 stone discs, 1 feet in diameter, and they were about 1 or 1.5 centimeters thick.
These have become known as the Dzoppa stones.
And these round stone discs had a black hole in the center. Some of them have a rectangular notch engraved in them, not cut out. Some of the notches were cut out, others were just engraved. And then they found a spiraling groove of closely written ancient characters like hieroglyphics radiating out from the center.
It is told that the expedition of Mr. Chai Pu-te brought a lot of these stone discs to Beijing because he had been in the Beijing Academy of Sciences.
According to believers, the Dzoppa stones were filed away with other items from antiquity. Some 20 years later, one scientist became interested in deciphering the hieroglyphs on the stones.
It must have been at the end of the 50s, 1958 or 1959, when Professor Dzoppa came upon these discs again, and what he could decipher was a very weird story.
It was on the stones that Dzoppa is said to have deciphered the name of the extraterrestrials. They call themselves the Dzoppa.
The name of the Dzoppas was written down on those stone discs.
And the story was as follows, that there was an alien crash landing in what is now Western China, 12,000 years ago.
Dr. Nui purportedly faced opposition when it came time to publish his findings.
In 1960 or 61, Professor Dzoppa published his reportings from his deciphering of the hieroglyphs. And the title was something like Hieroglyphs, which are telling the story of spacecraft crash-landed in the Bayan-Karaula Mountains in central China. Most of his colleagues thought it's an absolute nonsense.
However, the harsh reaction from the academic community in China did not silence the Dzoppa stone story. A handful of magazines published articles about Dr. Nui's work, keeping the remarkable story of the stones alive.
The first magazine which was publishing the story was the Russian Sputnik magazine. A Sputnik magazine has been in the early 60s a magazine reporting interesting items from behind the Iron Curtain.
After the Sputnik article, researchers say that the story spread around the world.
In 1962 or 63, the Belgian UFO investigator and then German publication, The Vegetarian Universe, they brought the same story again. Until the year 1974, these articles inside the magazines were the only informations we had. It has never been possible to go to China in those years and to ask if the story is true.
But some ufologists, people who research and study possible alien visitation, claim that the Dzoppa tale was kept alive by oral tradition in the Bayan-Karaula.
There are some old myths in those mountains which are telling the story of these small, tiny people crash landing from the sky.
Some of the legends claim that the Dzoppa came from a star system called Sirius.
The ancient story tells that their ancestors came from the star system of Sirius 12,000 years ago. Some of the earliest gods and goddesses who came to Earth, according to legend, from the star Sirius. For example, in ancient Egypt, you have the goddess Isis, the embodiment of the star Sirius. The pyramids of Egypt were built in alignment with the star Sirius.
The theory that ancient gods were actually space aliens is common among ufologists. Author Matthew Hurley has studied the God as space alien idea for over a decade.
Throughout history, looking at many cultures around the world, we often hear of beings coming down from the sky, and we often read of imagery of UFOs.
To primitive humans, the technologically advanced visitors could have easily been mistaken for gods.
They would have arrived in their ancient spacecraft. They would have had an unusual appearance. They would have spoken with a lot of wisdom and knowledge. So primitive man would have been overwhelmed by these experiences and may well have fallen into the trap of worshipping them as gods.
Today, we are left with only 2 verifiable photographs and a fantastic tale, supposedly written in alien hieroglyphs.